there are 16, but that, I don't know if that includes us. No, there's 9 attendees.
I think we can be heard.
Yeah.
Webinar is now streaming live on Facebook.
Yeah, so we're live. We are all witnessing this.
Well, okay.
Thank you, Susanna.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, no doubt you are already feeling intimate with us as you have just heard our chatter in our little challenge here with technology to bring this poetry reading to you. But hello and welcome. I'm Ellen Malphrus, and it is wonderful to have you all virtual here. We're really happy to be here ourselves for this poetry reading of the 5th annual Pat Conroy Literary Festival. We appreciate you supporting the festival every year in the fall. We appreciate you supporting the Pat Conroy Literary Center year round. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to make introductions, and then we are each going to read. I'm going to go ahead and do the introductions up front so that we can flow into a poetry reading uninterrupted. One of our little glitches this morning is that the person who is going to introduce me isn't able to do it. So I have just grabbed a recent publication that has those bio blurbs in the back. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll introduce our other poets. Ellen Malphrus published the 2015 novel Untying the Moon, foreword by Pat Conroy. Her work has been published in journals, anthologies, and collections, including Southern Literary Journal, Review of Contemporary Fiction, William and Mary Review, James Dickey Review, Haight-Ashbury Review, Blue Mountain Review, Catalyst, etc. She's also published in Our Prince of Scribes, Writers Remember Pat Conroy. She studied with James Dickey and is currently writer in residence at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. Emily Davis-Fletcher earned her BFA in creative writing from Stevens College and her MA in women's studies from the National University of Ireland, Galway. Her poetry has been published in Southward, Cranach Magazine, the Irish Examiner, the High Window, among other journals. She has taught creativity and poetry workshops at USCB's Continuing Education Institute, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and at the Pat Conroy Literary Center. In 2018, Emily was selected to be part of the Cork International Poetry Festival's Introductions reading. And most recently, her poem Sow Calling was finalist in the Sublingua Prize for Poetry 2019. Elizabeth Robin, a retired high school teacher living on Hilton Head Island, has 2 collections of poetry through Finishing Line Press, Where Green Meets Blue and Silk Purses and Lemonade. A poet of witness and discovery, she relates both true and fictional stories about her Lowcountry present and world-traveling past. Also published in fiction and nonfiction, her work appears most recently in Blue Mountain Review, the Broadkill Review, I Am Not a Silent Poet, Good Juju, The Fourth River, Foliate Oak, and Reflections. Robin MCs a monthly open mic, and beginning in 2021, the April Kickstart Poetry Month event for the Island Writers Network. In 2019, she began a partnership with Beaufort to bring monthly literary programs to Hilton Head Island. Gary Jackson, born and raised in Topeka, Kansas, is author of the poetry collection Missing You, Metropolis, which received the 2009 Cave Canem Poetry Prize. His poems have appeared in numerous journals, including Callaloo, Tin House, Los Angeles Review of Books, Crab Orchard Review, and he's been published in Shattered, the Asian American Comics Anthology. He was featured in the 2013 New American Poetry Series by the Poetry Society of America and is a recipient of both a Cave Canem and Breadloaf Fellowship. Jackson is a contributing essayist to A Measure of Belonging, 21 Writers of Color on the New American South. P.S. Join us for that panel tomorrow. He joined the Department of English at the College of Charleston in 2013 currently teaches in the MFA program as well as undergraduate creative writing, and is associate editor for Crazy Horse. And finally, Len Lawson is the author of Chime and co-editor of Hand in Hand, Poets Respond to Race. His poetry has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. He has received fellowships from Callaloo, Vermont Studio Center, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Weymouth Center for the Arts, and others. His poetry appears in Callaloo, African American Review, Ninth Letter, Verse Daily, Mississippi Review, and elsewhere. Len is also a PhD candidate in English Literature and Criticism at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, earning the 2020 IUP Outstanding Doctoral Student Award. He has taught English in South Carolina higher education for 10 years. And fun fact that I only just discovered, these two guys, Gary and Len, are also two of the editors of a forthcoming anthology, The Future of Black, Afrofuturism and Black Comics and Poetry, which sounds like so much fun. I cannot wait to hear more about that. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears to Poet Ellen and share a little bit of work with you. The first piece I'd like to read was written the day after New Year's this year. It is entitled Premonition, January 2nd, 2020. A cast-over hush of a day. White tulips bend to where there is no sun as the dog naps and the cat naps harder. Little winter birds flit and flash, awakened now from their own long morning quiet as a flicker drills at an oak tree. The low growl of a Sunday plane drifts back into silence, and the miles away road buzz goes entirely unhummed. I have lit a candle against the bleakness, but why it seems like gloom I cannot say. Here on the cusp of the oncoming year of perfect vision, maybe I'm afraid of what I might see, what I might not see. Today, I'd rather lie here in the porch swing with my eyes closed and listen to the dog snore, the heedless woodpecker laughing. This is a little poem entitled Other Chances. Herons pattern the shore in hieroglyphics, then settle into steely dusk, ready for the night hunt, and wait. Silver fish that rise to the glint are impaled by the unforeseen flash of sudden consequence. But those who get away carry the message of moonlight to where you lie in salt crisp sheets and watch through a curtainless window, pretending there is no design for escape. Escape is a thing that I think we've all spent a lot of time trying to do in one way or another in the past year. I'm going to read you a poem next that is an escape to Provence, to Aural. This is a special request of Miss Nidra Brown. This is called Our Lady of Aural. I have slept with 100 matadors and all the bright saints that they fear. Here where they long to be legend, embroidered boleros hang as portraits before the grand bed with its swirls of wrought iron and lust. From the square below, guitars flutter notes through the balcony doors, same songs, same players, but this one. For this one, never a mirror, only my eyes to say, yes, there is the grace of it. That is the motion. As candles spill gold with every flourish, and all the little deaths make way for the honored corrida. But this one, for this one, I take up my needle and stitch the deep brocaded cape, then kiss the satin hem and mend his prayers as he sleeps. Slip away when the drapes filter light. Through the sun-speared afternoon, I gather plums, and when the trumpet sounds, seek shade in the cloistered garden. Cheers ignite from the forum and roar above the streets while the crimson thrust finds its home. And as the great bull sags before him, I kneel with unpricked fingers and watch the white roses bleed beyond mercy for this one, this one. Let's escape again. This time, let's go to Monument Valley. This is for my friend N. Scott Momaday. On a cream-colored horse named Halo, I ride among sandstone mountain stubs shaped by the windsweep of eons. When we crest into Broadview, we shudder, both of us, as long ago forever melds with the shift of now. He has walked these red hills just hundreds of years, yet he knows the land as only a horse can. My guide is a shy young Navajo, and while we make our way around russet rock columns, we shadow the story of time. Layer on layer stand ready to tell it, but he is a boy and I am in awe, so we are unable to listen. Halo, of course, could interpret, but when you have seen what Halo has seen, it is not always easy to translate. After I have left them and dusk turns to starlight, Halo will settle into his makeshift pen and watch over the camper there, where the boy and his dad make their home. When the weather grows cold, they will make another, while the horse keeps their secrets and his own. For Halo speaks only in snowfall, though he sometimes is heard speaking rain. This is a poem for my mama. It's called A Meditation on Lot's Wife. Some of you folks, if you grew up in a Judeo-Christian environment, remember that story of Lot's wife looking back. When we moved out to the Galbert place, my mother left all those little pairs of high heels, those tiny size 5 shoes she had longed for and loved. 2 careful rows in the top of her closet, the ones in back perched on their bright colored boxes, the dotted Swiss, the two-toned, the blue ones, the swirls. We took school clothes and hot dogs to spend the first nights. Then came weeks of sporadic next loads when we went in with the truck for the bedroom set, their kitchen furniture, those end tables with the marble tops. Who'd ever heard of a moving van? And anyway, most of it was left behind like we were fugitives that had fled in the night. In the country were all the things they'd saved for: crockery, couch, appliances, curtains, an actual dining room suite, everything brand spanking. In town, the chipped greenback stamp dishes and tired chairs quietly gathered that special dust of the discarded. We were facing forward, I can tell you that. But how could she not take those fancy splurges that had spun in the showcase of globes on Broughton Street? And what else was she really leaving behind? Before word went out to the cousins that came with baskets and crates and picked over our past, I slipped a secret pair into my book bag, the black ones with the shiny red bows. And when I got them back to my new shag carpet bedroom, I could only pet the soft leather, my feet bigger than hers since the 5th grade. If she were here now, would she tell me of her uncharted desert, about pillars of salt and why those shoes kept her walking unworn? Or could it be she had somehow lost interest in stilettos, and the only denial was my own uncertain inkling that desire can grow tired of a dream? A couple more brief ones. I have been doing a lot of reading and writing of poetry, of social justice poetry, I guess we categorize it, protest poetry. And I gave myself permission to escape from that this morning, but I can't help but read one called Founding Father. As you gallop through the park in granite stillness, children stretch from playground swings toward the cloud-capped roof of innocence, expecting to break the sky if they spring out far enough. And even if they land in earthbound sneakers, they have traveled farther than your stone horse will take you ever again. A child's reign might lead away from this block of town square immortality, but they are busy and don't come close enough to notice your green streaked face or hear the echo in your bloodless veins, hero. They don't know that you die again as they squeal in sunlight, and still more in the sharp of night when floodlights point clear and cold. This last little thing is called relativity. Turns out that unsettled old slat house on the road to nowhere is right outside of town if you're coming from the other way. Makes for a different story, but the latch is still busted on the barn swallow porch and the chimney refuses the wall. It's hard to know which is the sadder version, but never mind what emptiness tells you. Sunflowers can always jump the ditch. Thank you. And now I invite Robin to read, followed by Gary and then Len.
Thank you, Ellen. That was lovely. That was really quite lovely. And thank you to the Pat Conroy Literary Center for putting on this festival again and inviting me to participate. I really appreciate the opportunity. The first one I'm going to read is from Silk Purses and Lemonade, my first book, and this is actually the title poem. It's a persona poem. I wanted to kind of work through how it feels if you're in a relationship and you're ghosted. Silk Purses. Maybe if I shave my legs, spring will come. I daintily sidestep around my confusion. I climb through the blurred, darkened opening. Eating words for breakfast, the edges of my mind feel sharpened, like a ribbon shredding oyster shell. Awake, I realize my facelessness. Maybe he's in Cars Land, driving through jaw-dropping red rock cliffs, or Dismal Land, where Cinderella crashes and he burns. Or maybe he's still here in some alternate plane where leaving without a word seems civilized, simple, kind. He's still not here. Only his ghost in random misplaced socks, the suit stored in the back closet. I will spin a gossamer sheen of silk, a veil masking sorrow and joy, build a compact purse, compress my world to fit inside his, into the eminent domain of spectral territory. I'll open that silk purse and cram it with laughs, stuff in cries until life bursts its cloture and everything actually has a reason. Sand works the oyster and I become the pearl, made by Disney, scripted in Hollywood, a dreamscape approved for mass production. This next one was supposed to be the title poem of this collection. It's an homage to my late brother. Beware of flying pigs. Retreat into a downy cocoon, insulated in sleep. A choice. Babble unending platitudes, masked as deep philosophical truths, absorbed by words, vomiting pain. Another option. Check on everyone's well-being but your own. Gulp down angst like a nestling at its first meal, choking on possibility. Distract with pounding repetition, resurrection myths, snake oil remedies. Each method offers its own brand of hope. I filter walking along a shore where meaning lies within each title change. He stands like Custer, unbending, angry others retreat into statistical impossibility. When pigs fly, he shouts, that's when I'll give up. Shamed by his confidence, I retract inside a cynic's shell and respond, beware of flying pigs. This next one comes from Where Green Meets Blue, which is a book that was kind of an homage to the Lowcountry and my late husband. This first one is called Stand By. I feel each singular skin cell pressing inward, underwater, not drowning, but unable to breathe. Thick, rain-filled clouds speed across the sky. Doom lurks. Forecasts call for deluge. Pockmarked radar warns of tornadoes. Ahead, I see a twisted path, dainty plodding through caring betrayals. How can I explain? No one's home. I stare into the storm, watch limbs sway and drop, longing to become the bark that squirrels scurry along, that redstarts cling to, that rain kisses, the woodpecker ravishes, and the osprey nests inside, until somehow my roots gnarl back into the firm, rich earth. This one specifically to my late husband, it's a fun form called a skinny poem. It was published in the Skinny Journal, and it has like a very specific word limit and repetition and line structure. It's really fun to play with. And I call this Solo. Blue jays squawk a tango as if their duende dies in the downpour. Mourning past rains, souls mourning futures screamed empty, mourning as if blue jays pour a tango down duendes and their squawks die. These next three are from a new collection as yet unpublished. And the first two were inspired on a trip I took in 2018 with my dog and in a camper. We went to 28 national parks, over 19,000 miles. I spent a lot of time staring at the sky, which may explain the topics here. But this first one I call In Clouds. A bird appears in silhouette, so high it dances with the clouds, milky and swirling. Its circles seem lazy, looping without purpose, at first concentric laps, then figure eights, oval meanderings, higher and higher. I look away and lose sight, think, did it dive, disappear inside a cloud? I never know. Even the cloud, substantial only minutes, dissolves. This bird, so distant, always traveling, I can't identify, but I know this journey. This one was published by the late Reuben Woolley in I Am Not a Silent Poet. He was one of the editors that got me started. And I call this At Wounded Knee. I lie on my back, reading South Dakota clouds, like the child I was, but I can't summon fluffy cartoon whales and elephants and teddy bears. Here, I see jagged daggers in the sky, bayonets skewering babies, cannonballs flying into chiefs and warriors just disarmed. at mothers and children scrambling into the gully, surrounded by hundreds of soldiers firing at will. Banish these images and trace the outline of a buffalo's fleecy hump, immense horned head bent, fleeing until it dissolves into a husk of silver dollars and rotting meat. Legacy of a people who take what pays and take until it disappears. A treaty, when inconvenient, conjures the escape clause to justify the slaughter, and a trail of tear makers who won't believe in dream catchers or ghost shirts. They just look at clouds and wonder how to turn a profit. And I'm closing with the poem that actually closes the new collection. And I wrote this for my friend Nicole. Paper thin. Paper comes with rules, size and shape, lines spaced in precision, marching down 11 lockstep inches, ruled, no variation accepted, no 1-inch margins expected, only holes wiggle from none to 3 or 5, identical in size, as though every hole measures equally. What spills on each page proves a different truth. Messy stains, altered pulp, fading margins, words bust right through. Proof some lines can't hold, and holes can punch you. I choose unlined sheets, letter paper, blank, grained, textured, deckled in pale shades, lively patterns, and escape the margins others draw to shrink my story.
Thank you, Robin. That was beautiful. Thank you. That was fantastic. Now, I know that at the outset I said Emily would read and then Robin would read, but then I had Robin's face in front of me and said her name, so my apologies. Now we will hear from Emily. Thank you.
Thank you. That's quite all right. I mean, this is the year of surprises, right? So it's all good. Thanks, Ellen and Elizabeth and Len and Gary for reading with me. And thank you so much to Jonathan and Brooke for inviting me to read. This is a real privilege. I can remember being at this reading last year, and as much as I loved, soaking in the poetry, part of me was like, I want to be up there. And thank you all for listening. I see so many of my friends and myself in the audience, which is really funny. I'm a panelist and an attendee. All right, so I'm going to start with, I have 5 poems. This first poem I'm going to start right off the bat with some of my flaws. Why not? And then get into other people's with the later poems. But I don't know, I'm just joking. It's very liberating to write about. I feel like I really became a writer when I could then like look at myself and my flaws and not just be like observing and witnessing and documenting other people. So, all right. My top right central incisor. This man with latex hands jokes with his assistant, pass the hammer, as if it can be fixed, like a leaning fence post, as if it could make me smile, like a pair of sad clown portraits, as if I could forget it, like the tiger's eye in my pocket, as if my top right central incisor is not myself out of line, hip jutting, arms crossed when I lie, deny I told Mel at Saturday's sleepover, my uncle has AIDS, a stone that shelters a frog from summer sun, sit there, I tell my sister, and when the stone rocks forward, I drop on her, you killed a frog. The snout of a possum skull poking through a hayloft, smelling I'm stuck with the wasp I shake in a jar till my arms ache. A hard, smooth belly of garlic, undressed, under the sharp knife I hold for the first time, chop the way mom shows me. Without cutting myself, I say, you should have an abortion. His t-shirt I punch in the back on a line of whites. My bedroom door that jumps as the stray we named Al is beaten for biting the tail off a calf. Your 3 pillows to my 1. Hug me, I whisper up. No, hug me, you whisper down. Okay, and this next poem, I'm gonna just say this because I'm disappointed in Missouri. These 2 poems are set in Missouri, so Missouri can be a scary place. After school, I shrug off my book bag at the front door and rush to the mirror to see what the older kids on the bus laugh at. Mom lies on her side between the sink and tub, like she was falling and passed out, waiting for someone to catch her. I stand over her on tiptoe, 1 foot at the curve of her back, the other by her belly, gone soft around the cesarean scar. She breathes deeply into the shag carpet, the color of thirsty grass that's sprinkled with baking soda each time the toilet overflows. I stare like stones to see why the boy whose name I write in hearts doesn't notice me, while her hair covers her eyes and fishes in her mouth for reasons not to give up. Okay, this next poem, Stings. They're nothing spectacular, but they'll do. You let slip, wiggling close in bed, reach through moonlight, cup my right breast. Like a drowning bee you save in your hand, I could sting you. On the beach in Barcelona, I folded my swimsuit down to my waist, daring you not to notice another woman's bikini top sprawled in the sand like jellyfish stunned by a mate. Remember that man, skin the color of ripe barley at sunset, selling small cans of beer at full prices, treading round volcanic islands of women, their nipples the first spurts of lava, to rest on his haunches beside me. I rolled onto his shadow. I could sting you again. In the magic house from my childhood, I place you upstairs. Your hands roam over a glass ball, bigger than your head. Electric blue cracks rise from its core to your palms and fingertips as every hair on your body jerks up like an animal sensing something spectacular. Downstairs, the sunset on Barley Man and I are on all fours. Taking turns, we press a cheek against the cool floor, peer into a hole the size of a cat's eye. Our pupils dilate, then constrict, as a white light springs on 2 pale mice, sitting at a butcher block table, buttering toast and stirring tea with the curved blades of their tails. This is sort of why I think maybe I'm an evening poet. It seems a little early to be reading these things. I haven't even had breakfast yet. All right, turning 30. Hope you all have had breakfast. Turning 30. Now you blame no one and nothing, not heat ringing your body, not the crystal ball revealed in your mother's lung, not the caged mutt salivating for coming rain like blood, not the cicada's sex rattle or the trees dressed for hangings, not the man who grabbed your thighs to pull you from an angel oak, not stories of ghosts and first loves rising over the exhaust of hearses corralled out back as gray dawn blows out shadows of leaves across his wood, not the skin you left behind still feeling for the first time you own every move, ripe with loss as you outlive another death. Okay, and this last poem is one of my newest poems. It's titled "The Clown Awaits Your Cue." To see him, you must see out of the corners of your eyes, open to possibilities. Write love letters and poems, often starting with, "Where are you?" Under your pillow, keep a list of the qualities you want. The river of your dreams carries each inky word off the page. Ask insects to broadcast your signals, especially ants. The world is stitched by ants. Console tree stumps, reassure the limb of a marsh oak that its egret will return. Remind an egret that her branch squints beyond the horizon for her. Solicit the moon to hold your vision. Fold matching socks and leave at the foot of your bed like eggs. Balance a fist-sized cliff of obsidian on your pubic bone. Focus on your circus. Sweep out all the monkeys in their cherry red vests. The one who flicked ash into cans round his bed. The one who only apologized for his harsh laundry detergent. The one whose idea of foreplay was to place your hand on prehistoric shark teeth. Let go of the acrobats who swung out with open arms and dropped you. With deep belly breaths, clear the elephants of fear, wearing scarlet brocade dresses. They trumpet from the shadows that you are not good enough, not worthy, not lovable. Grab fear of being hurt by its scraggly tail and yank hard until you feel the root pop loose. Give the dancing bear of abandonment new music. The gyro's horse stomp and watch her hips turn a figure 8. Cut the polyester kitten ears from tigers you have caged in your throat and called swollen lymph nodes. Free them to climb the king pole, burst into the sky and hit the ground running like lava. Sit your inner child in the front row with plenty of popcorn and watch her face brighten as your tent is cleared, the way an egg sac erupts with the stars of tiny silver spiders. Hold her hand tightly when she jerks to run toward a clown you've started to call John the Baptist. He showed up first with qualities from your list, as if he'd waded into your dreams. He plays in bed like an otter on a riverbank, rips through the plastic armor on your heart with tenderness, offers you the first sip of water in the morning. Still, he is not committed to your circus and cuts your heart nearly as often as its plastic armor. Remind your inner child as she salts her popcorn with tears that the best clown is coming, like the clown from her favorite book, who when he juggled, a rainbow swirling between his hands, tossed the golden ball into the air, last and at the right moment. Thank you.
Yay, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Emily. That was wonderful work. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
And now we will hear from Gary Jackson.
Hi. Can everybody hear me okay before I start? Okay. I know Ellen can at least. So thank you, Ellen, for those wonderful introductions. And thank you to like Robin, Emily, Len, for being here, and Jonathan and Caroline and the Pat Conroy Literary Festival for getting us all together. And especially thank you all who are watching us today when I'm sure there's other exciting news going on exactly as we read this, it sounds like, and it's good news at that. So I'm just going to jump in and read just a handful of poems. Most of these are newish poems in the sense that they're not from my first book, Missing You, Metropolis, but Some of them are actually from my forthcoming book, which, if everything goes well, will be out next fall. So that should be fun. So this first poem I'm going to read is just loaded with pop culture references. So a few I could say off the bat. My first book, Missing in Metropolis, deals a lot with superheroes. And so I'm still kind of continuing that trend in this poem, which has a lot of references to a particular superhero. If anybody knows her, she is part of that team of mutants called the Uncanny X-Men, and her name is Dazzler. And she has a terrific origin story, which this poem explores, but her power is that she's a disco queen. She was made during the disco era, and she could turn sound into light was her ability. Other things that might be worth knowing is if you have any familiarity with Grace Jones, that will come in handy, as well as Bo Derek. This poem is called, oh, and Donna Summer. This poem is called What If, featuring the Dazzler. Summer of 79, and everyone's sitting here eating my heart out, waiting for some lovers to call. And Casablanca Records realizes there's money to be made. So they make some calls, eager to create another superstar, a triple threat, singer, actress, superhero. The famous artist's son designs her, a Black woman leaning over the executive's desk in a white jumpsuit with a neckline so low it's out of view. Short white hair slicked back tight, surrounded by the uncanny X-Men. Though this Dazzler is a far cry from some white girl on roller skates. This Dazzler is pure Grace Jones, fresh off 3 albums, the next big thing. But the executives disagree. They want more Bo Derek in 10. So the artist's son quits, and by the time they turn Dazzler white, things have fallen apart. There will be no record deal or feature film, not even an invitation to the Uncanny X-Men until years later. Imagine what might have been. Grace Jones doubling the Uncanny X-Men's number of Black employees. Cyclops shaking her hand before giving her the tour of the X-Mansion, introducing her to the team before finally letting Storm take her into an office or attic or whisk her high into the sky, anywhere they can be alone and speak honestly about working alongside all these white folks. Grace Jones would ask, how is it really working here? What's the culture like? And do you feel lonely sometimes? And Storm would respond, the pay isn't great, but it's a good job. And sometimes you get to fly and see things no one else ever gets to see. It's important for us to work in these spaces, and I'm glad you're here. I'm so happy you're here. It's a conversation some of us have had before. I did when I first started teaching here, and the colleague who talked to me and became my dear friend over our shared love of comic books had the same conversation when she interviewed at the same college. She's no longer here because she passed away, and I feel more alone than I've ever felt in a long time, because all my friends are slowly being erased, because even though I own every issue of Dazzler, she's no Grace Jones. So this next poem kind of continues in that vein, and it's called The Restoration, which is the name of a rooftop bar here in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I currently reside. And that's probably all you need to know. Oh, also, this was written not too long after the 2016 election, so it feels kind of appropriately symmetrical to read this today. The Restoration. We drank coffee and got ready, listened to 93.3 during our commute, to take our mind off how every day we die on TV. Every day down the block, kids in surgical masks, spray paint, Magneto was right on street signs and new storefronts, waiting to redeem spa resort passes and avocado toast dreams, until they too are forced out of business. Or not. Motherfuckers can surprise you, like beating cancer or criminal charges, or the 2016 election, the high cost of middle shelf liquor with a decent view. If you want to succeed, let them see you coming, our mothers once said, before asking if we wanted the switch or the belt. But an ass whooping beats sitting at the rooftop bar, looking over the steepled skyline and feeling the pang of worlds we'd rather be, with 2 empty seats right beside us that stay empty for the next 2 hours, surrounded by people drinking and eating, standing up, the wind threatening to blow their hats off their sunburned heads. Somewhere, right now, there are 2 people looking for those seats. We keep hoping they'll find them, find us. Let's have another drink. Watch the muted news above a row of decent bourbon. Wait to hear, to see if they make it to us or turn up on TV. Just going to read 2 more poems. And the next one is pretty short. And fun fact, it was made into an animated like short, which is as surprising for me to say as it probably is for other people to hear that. So you can actually find this, I think, on YouTube. And if you Google the title, which is Tryouts, it was part of this kind of arts collective that turns a lot of poems into like short films. And I was lucky to have this poem taken and given that treatment. So it actually opens with 2 quick epigraphs. The first one is from Audre Lorde, from her poem A Litany for Survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. And the second excerpt is the main influence for this poem, which is from Black Lightning, a superhero that's on the cover of Justice League of America, number 173. And on the cover, he's like slapping away Superman's hand. And he says, with that jive bunch of turkeys in the JLA, forget it. And this poem is called Tryouts. There's one boy on fire and another drowning. You only get to save one for your final exam, so you lift the wet boy from the lake and don't realize your mistake until Superman touches down. Sorry, son. We can't have someone who chooses their own over everyone else. The boy's brown fingers hold tight to your emblem, leave wet impressions on your chest. Next year, the same, and the same after that. Every time you choose wrong. Blame it on Empire. Superman, his arm wrung around your neck. We're trying to save the world here. His eyes pure blue, confirming what you already knew. You always save the ones never meant to survive. And that last line is actually from that same Audre Lorde poem, by the way, too. Stealing is the best form of flattery, I guess, or sincerest form of flattery. So this last poem I'm going to read is a little bit like reading the end of a novel before anybody's ever read the novel. So it's called Arlington, and it is about my grandmother's funeral on my mother's side. And it's a poem that basically is about kind of mainly my mother and her mother. And it's kind of the culmination of their relationship through the years. My mother is half Black and half Korean. She was born in Seoul, and her mother is Korean, and her father was an African-American GI that served during the Korean War. So there's a lot of poems that are about that particular family dynamic. And this poem is basically kind of at the end of the line at my grandmother's funeral. Also, my mother and myself both grew up in Kansas. And similar to Emily's thoughts on Missouri, Kansas is not the best place, I feel like, for a lot of reasons. So, Arlington. It's spring, it's fiction, it's fact, it's scores of women who left their homes and families by coercion or force or desperation, survival or love, and if you squint hard enough, they all feel the same. It's 1961. It's Fort Belvoir, Virginia. It's built on a plantation. It's Dookie O promising to stay in touch with other Korean brides while she packs to move to Kansas to live with her husband's family. It's one seat. It's two foreign bodies. It's her baby girl in her lap. It's 2018. It's Arlington. It's the obituary calling her 80. It's no one knows. It's my mother's loving her mother's last lie. How she knew the years could be used against you. Sex and color too. Dookie realized too late. It's none of us stepping up when the pastor asks who wants to share some of the good times they had. It's how there's so few of us left. It's the terrible truth. It's my mother purchasing her own plot the day her daughter died. It's one last drink before liftoff. It's the little girl on her mother's lap. It's my mother who looks forward, looks back to a place she'll never return, says Kansas is death, and fuck death. It's a promise she knows she'll break. Thank you. It's my pleasure now to finally introduce the one and only Len Lawson. The floor is yours, Len.
Thank you, Gary. That was fantastic. That was soul enriching. Thank you. Okay,
Thanks.
Len.
Can everyone hear me, see me? All right. Thanks, Gary, for that introduction, and also Ellen and Robin and Emily. Such wonderful poems from you all. Thank you for those in the audience for being patient and listening intently, I hope. And I'm just going to get right at it. These first two poems I'm going to read come from my book that came out last year called Chime. This first poem is based off of a banner that was displayed in Boston and Fenway Park, the baseball stadium, in protest. And the banner said, "Racism is as American as baseball." So that sounded like a prompt to write a poem from. So this is called "Racism is as American as." A race to be called world champions of an American sport, as biased as the American race. The human race is un-American. Americans are as hyphenated as an Emily Dickinson poem, broken into shards of color and class. Now that's as American as a sliced up pie, divided, never symmetrical, as hacked up as bovine bodies in a butcher shop. 100% American prime cuts, cooked well, but still bloody, dripping as wet as dye on a new flag. Whether you stand or kneel before it, the red drips into your eyes. You become lost behind the bars of it. Now that's as American as prison bars, where Americans divide into shards of color. They know that being American doesn't matter behind bars. Stars don't twinkle there, as on a spangled banner or in a patriotic song, as racist as calling someone else's native land your land of the free, as racist as using their names for your ball teams, hitting home runs with their names on your chest, forgetting that you gave them those names, playing games with race. Now that's just like America's pastime. So the second one is, I suppose, less edgy. I grew up in a small town called Bamberg, South Carolina. So My mom used to make my sister and I shell beans into a bowl and package them up as is a custom for uh, Southern families, and puts them in a big box freezer, and then you never see them again till the end of time. So I thought I would write about that. So this is called Snap Beans. Scrooge McDuck's fingers swim through green gems in a Tupperware bowl. Young mannish hands crave a decadence they don't understand. Husky plump stems release their essence into my bowl, and I play with delight. Find them, lose them, and find them again in my palms. Riches don't just buy freedom in this bowl. Emerald waves gather here, ebbing and flowing like garden-grown waterfalls. Much more fulfilling than aching my thumbs, unzipping the stems, rescuing the beans. My fingers forget they're tired. Mama says, "Stuck them beans with your thumbs, boy." Unknown somebodies ate their fingers, their backs, their glistening brows to secure the stimulus for my elation. Stalks in my bowl must be relieved by my thuggish hands. So these next few poems are newer. This first is an elegy for Chadwick Boseman, who passed away this year. Was in so many great movies, playing the likes of Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, and of course, Black Panther. Elegy for Chadwick Boseman. The Black Panther lives forever. His mantle passes from generation to generation. But this was a man, flesh and bone, breathing among us, living, smiling, crossing his arms at his chest, for us, for all of us with melanin souls, for the spirits in our Black chests, our ambassador of Blackness. When our own country allows our genocide, when our protectors keep blasting our bodies into the astral plane, a hero who gave us Black icons on screen instead of Black blood canvassing pavement, lambs dragged to brazen altars at traffic stops. We beheld his CGI glory descending in Endgame. Second coming from a morning star portal, with every African regality, ancestor, and deity filling his chest and healing arms with valor. We salute, fists raised, eyes lifted, hearts heavy with vibranium. Also a South Carolina native, of course. This next one is called Love Me Like Your Guns. I'm as black as they. I'm your trophy above the mantle. I'm your side piece in your holster. You have the right to bear me in your arms from God Almighty. Grip the neck of this coveted steel. I'm your dirty letters and naughty numbers. AR-15, 9mm, your 45. Rat-a-tat-tat me, block, blam, blow into the early morning. Your Saturday night special. I'll take load after load, one bullet at a time. Twirl me around on your finger and lick my barrel before squeezing me tight until I explode. So I really only have a couple more poems here to share. Like Gary said, I know everyone is probably more in tune with the news right now. So I'll be brief. This next one is definitely a new poem that I've written recently, or an anthology about work or the working class. So this is called Work Is, with respect to Philip Levine. Work is standing outside to shake loose the dawn, with brown paper bag of lunch in one hand and cigarette lamp to light the world in the other, watching both lanes of highway in front of home for the ride that will carry you into the jaws of the factory. Work is standing outside on breaks in a chanting circle, heaving heaving plumes of burnt offerings from cigarettes while you and your cohorts discuss babies and mamas and baby mamas and baby mamas' mamas, hoping to pry open the jaws of the factory for overtime to save them all. Work is standing outside with aching arched back against the neck of the factory, scratching each rung of vertebrae on the corner with eyes inspecting every car on the street that you hope is your ride home, twisting your feet in tribal dance to bury cigarette butts into the pavement after the whistle blows for home and the jaws of the factory empty into the streets. Work is the blackened, cracked lips, the mangled spine, the beleaguered eyes you gave for decades to fill the belly of the factory, the gray hair, the creaky joints, the hip replacement, the caravan of prescriptions from asbestos exposure lining your coffee table, pill box labeled with days of the week, days you remember waking at godly hours to serve as priests and priestesses to the heavenly host of some overseas company misspelling your name on pay stubs. Work is done. And what will you do with these benevolent days that belong to you? You will beg for the jaws of the factory to scoop you into their cradled arms again. I'm going to read only one more. This is based on an iconic photo of a formerly enslaved man going by the name of Gordon. And it's famous because he's showing his back in the picture, and it's just a tremendous amount of scars that are seen. You can Google the photo for the name Slave Gordon. It'll probably come up. But I wrote a poem similar to this. This is sort of like a speculative type of poem with sort of an Afrofuturistic feel. So this is just called Gordon. After the photo by William D. McPherson and Mr. Oliver, 1863, CDV by Matthew Brady. There's an epigraph from Virginia Hamilton's The People Could Fly. They say the people could fly, say the people who could fly kept their power, although they shed their wings. Africans and their descendants sold into slavery had special abilities. Gordon could create a GPS with the scars on his back. One needed only to place a hand on his back and the path to freedom emerged. He was a North Star, bright as the morning. They called him Whip Peter, but his mutant code name was the Compass. This is how he found the Union camp after escaping from his Louisiana plantation. But he went back and helped more of his brethren escape. Of course, he could no longer live among them on the plantation, so he camped in swamps among alligators and moccasins. The freedom seekers sought him in the trees or under the surface of the river, but he found them running for their lives as he had. He soothed their panic with the treasure map patterns on his back. He embraced them with black skin crop circles. He placed their hands on him, and they beheld his glory. He was a gift from above, living like John the Baptist. He knew his calling was greater than the master's whip. He knew even when he was tied to the overseer's post, feeling the leather burn grace into his flesh. He knew when his screams echoed through the southern wilderness, back across the ocean onto the African shores, and to the tribes that birthed him. He saw them with every clapping slice through his back, cracks of prophetic lightning to his soul. They appeared vividly, chanting with heavy breaths. They blew smoke into the air, and the fog spelled out his name. He knew he had to liberate his people from bondage. They were already a free nation. Setha Suggs had a tree growing out of her back. It could reach into space with unborn babies and ancestors hovering on every limb, warring with a ghost who ate at its roots. But Gordon the Compass had a rocket on his back, an ambassador to the cosmos. He piloted brothers and sisters saying, "Touch me. I'll take you wherever you want to go." Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Len. That was wonderful, remarkably powerful work. Thank you for sharing it with us all. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Jonathan and Brooke and Holland and Caroline and everyone out there in Zoom land. Folks, we have just experienced something that none of us will ever forget. While we have been partaking, while we have been communing at the altar of art, Brother Tim Conroy, Pat Conroy's brother, the poet, sent news that Vice President Biden is now President-elect Biden. We are joyous. If that offends you, Pat Conroy would not apologize. Pat Conroy would be doing a jig right now, and so he is. But it means such a great deal to me that we were doing this thing while that thing happened. What Brother Tim said is, poetry brings it home. The healing begins. Thank you all for coming. We've got lots more in store for you at the Pat Conroy Literary Festival this weekend. Stay tuned. See you for another round. Thank you, poets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Happy
thank
New
you, Ellen.
Wow. I think we're still recording.
Yeah.
It all go have a celebratory
Drink or breakfast.
For breakfast, yeah. Oatmeal.
The breakfast drink.
Yeah.
Brunch.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
Mimosas and
Well,
brunch.
let's
All
all
right.
go do our celebrating, and
Yeah.
hope to see you sooner than later.
Yeah. Likewise.
Be
See
well,
everybody.
everybody. Be well. Be well.
No, Suzanne is asking for the link for tomorrow's panel.
The link for, I'm not sure which panel tomorrow. Oh, probably the panel that that Gary's going to be in. I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry.
So some people should just go to the festival website.
Go to the festival website. Each of the events has its link there for you to click on to register.
Okay, so that's like Pat Conroy Literary Festival. Okay.
Pat Conroy Literary Festival. Just go on to Facebook and go to the Pat Conroy Literary Center or the festival, and all the events will be there.
Okay, great.
Thank you all. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.